Today, millions of believers spend time speculating as to the identity of the Antichrist, or how credit cards and universal product codes might relate to the mark of the beast. Little do many of us realize that in a very real sense, we're spending hours a day sitting before His image, listening to His deceptions, traveling a road of celluloid and sound waves that only too often leads into the very belly of the beast.
I mean, you realize who goes to see movies. 80% of them are between the ages of 12 and 22. And you know what kids like?
What?
Well, this may sound silly to you, but kids go completely ape if you do three things in a picture. Defy authority, destroy property, and take people's clothes off.
Given the destructive content of so much of today's movies, music, and television, it's understandable that concerns about communist plots and satanic conspiracies have been raised. But while socialism and the occult are very real influences in Hollywood, the primary force behind all this visual and oral wickedness is nothing more sinister than the love of the almighty dollar.
Socialist views. So there are a few ideologically inclined people in Hollywood. There have been two studios that have been known for their left-wing stance for many, many years. In the middle, there are a lot of people who are just in Hollywood trying to make money. You know, that's the name of the game. That's why they call it an industry. And they just want to be supported in the manner that they've become accustomed. So
Roger Corman had an incredible way of a formula, making up a formula for his pictures, his exploitation films. And in Boxcar Bertha, he told me, remember, every 15 pages, nudity. Pages. Not, you know, in the script. And whether it's a leg, full nudity, or maybe just the suggestion of nudity, but every 15 pages, you've got to keep that interest going.
Another influential director who got his start with Roger Corman was Francis Ford Coppola.
I made the most vulgar, entertaining, exciting, actionful, sensoramic, give them a new thrill every 5 minutes, have it everything, sex, violence, humor, because I want people to come and see it.
In an interview he gave after The Godfather became an international sensation, he described his willingness as a young college student to do anything to get to make more films. And the best opportunity was in the field of the exploitation film, by which I mean nudie, science fiction, and horror films. Coppola went on to describe his first job with Roger Corman, a remake of the Russian science fiction film Nevozoyet.
Just think, a new world is almost within our grasp.
In one of the saddest commentaries on the taste of the American film-going public, as well as on the integrity of those who make our films, he remembered, "I knew that the Russians made very warm, brotherly love science fiction films, and that no one in this country would ever want to see a science fiction picture that didn't have a lot of sex and violence in it. In one scene, for example, a Russian astronaut sees the figure of a golden astronaut, a symbol of hope, standing on a crag. It was really lovely." Roger said, "We've got to put two monsters on that crag." He wanted one monster to be a male sexual symbol and the other to be female. Obviously, one had to devour the other. We said to Roger, "This is just too much. You can't just," but we could and we did, matting in sex and violence, where the Russians had the golden astronaut of hope.
And now, a few moments of gratuitous sex and violence.
The real problem isn't some secret conspiracy of communists, Satanists, or some other off-the-wall special interest group. In large part, the media man is simply giving us what we pay for. And from this, we can learn two very valuable lessons. One, that the Bible got it right when it said, "The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." And two, the problem isn't ultimately with Hollywood, it's with us. And that is where the solution is going to have to begin. We'll talk more about our responsibility and what the church can do to reform the media industry in Lights, Camera, Blasphemy, the last tape in the Hollywood collection. Before we leave this section, however, I want us to briefly examine the dominant philosophy of art that floats around the periphery of the industry. Because while the bottom line may be the bottom line, there are still those who cling to the truth that music and film, as art forms, should mean something. And for these artists, there's another purpose for their craft besides simply filling movie theaters.
Monster of energy. It's a monster. Kiss the snake on the tongue. Kiss the serpent. But if it senses fear, it'll eat us instantly. But if we kiss it without fear, it'll take us through the garden, through the gate, to the other side.
In Academy Award-winning director Oliver Stone's film The Doors, Jim Morrison was resurrected as a cultural icon, a shaman whose philosophy of life and art was presented as a key to understanding the profound cultural changes that overtook America in the 60s. More importantly, however, Morrison's desire to break on through to the other side, to shatter what were perceived to be the artificial and repressive limits of truth and morality imposed by Christianity, to travel, in William Blake's words, the road of excess in hope that it would lead to the palace of wisdom, became, by Stone's own admission, the paradigm that was to guide his own life and art.
Father, yes, son, I want to kill you. Mother, I want to.
And Oliver Stone is far from alone in viewing the role of the artist in this way. Without question, this philosophy, in one form or another, provides the very foundation for the brave new world being fashioned by the media elite. This philosophy is perhaps best described as the cathartic view of art. The idea that the best and bravest way to come to terms with the dark passions of the human heart is to simply embrace them, to give them detailed expression through the medium of film or music. For these high priests of Hollywood, the writer, the director, and the musician are there to lead us into the heaven that presumably lies waiting beyond the gates of hell.
Nothing to be feared but to look inward to see that twisted mind that lies beneath the surface of all humans, and to say, yes, I accept you. I even love you because you're a part of me. You're an extension of me.
This scene was shot for Apocalypse Now, Francis Coppola's epic translation of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. For Coppola, this journey into night became a metaphor for not only America's struggle in Vietnam, but the journey of both artist and audience into the dark light of being.
The film Francis is making is a metaphor for a journey into self. You have to fail a little, die a little, go insane a little to come out the other side.
Kat Rubin echoed this philosophy when she described the response she sought to evoke through the dark and troubling Poison Ivy. I feel that as a director, I have to provoke, to take everything to the farthest extreme I can, to get what I want across.
Honey, I'm glad you're awake.
What a dumb, sick jerk I've been.
Honey, quiet now, because there's...
Which little party are you afraid of me ruining?
The same orientation guides Barbet Schroeder, the acclaimed director who brought us Barfly, Single White Female, and Maîtresse, a French film that explores another world of sadomasochistic sex. By his own admission, Schroeder is a student of perversity, most specifically the bizarre sexual practices of occult philosopher Havelock Ellis. He remembers that he came to the conclusion, very young, that if you only have one of Havelock's perversions, you're a prisoner. But I want the intensity, so I want to have them all at the same time.
Where the hell have you been?
Jennifer Jason Leigh, the co-star of Single White Female, described both Schroeder and his art when she observed that he was a man who can seriously go into the dark side of things and enjoy it and have compassion and feelings for this darkness.
God?
My Own Private Idaho is another movie that exists for no other reason than to embrace this darkness. The unrelentingly bleak tale of two male prostitutes, this critically acclaimed film is an exquisite realization of director and screenwriter Gus Van Sant's artistic vision. As he told one Hollywood reporter, I believe the properly manipulated image can provoke an audience to the Burroughsian limit of riot, rampant sex, instantaneous death, even spontaneous combustion. The raw materials of inspiration include elements as primal and potentially frightening as violence, sex, and death. Martin Scorsese, perhaps America's foremost director, echoes Von Sant in both style and philosophy, acknowledging that his films are cathartic, therapy for his personal anger and rage and craziness. And Adrian Lyne, director of Fatal Attraction and 9.5 Weeks, deliberately explores the dark corners of the human psyche as a way of speaking to something lurking somewhere inside all of us.
Is rewriting really censorship, Bill? Because I'm completely worried if it is. Exterminate all rational thought. That is the conclusion I have come to.
And last, but certainly not least, acclaimed director David Cronenberg begins Naked Lunch, his hallucinatory exploration of art and existentialist reality, with the quote, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted." A statement the movie tries hard to live up to, as the so-called hero transcends the contrived limitations of both life and art by, among other things, killing his wife, becoming a homosexual, and injecting roach killer into his veins. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Cronenberg discussed the themes that Naked Lunch sought to explore. Nothing is true. Morality is not absolute. It's only a human construct, very definitely able to change and susceptible to change and rethinking. And you can then be free. Free to be unethical, immoral, ultimately. If you're an existentialist and you don't believe in God and the judgment after death, then you can do anything you want. You can kill, you can do whatever society considers the most taboo thing. In the same interview, Cronenberg was even more overt about his priestly ambitions when he stated, "Yes, I'm putting art in opposition to religion, or as a replacement for religion." These are among the more notable and influential artists who point to catharsis as a rationale for their shameless excursions into what was once forbidden territory. Many other artists, including musicians and writers, throw out variations of the same theme. Whether they use it as just a good-sounding excuse or embrace it with all the ardor and messianic zeal of a David Cronenberg, the bottom line is still the same. Black is still black, and God still calls it sin. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. The Bible is quite clear as to the root of man's moral confusion. The heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?
I don't know where these thoughts are coming from. I can't keep them out of my head.
Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord judges the heart. In other words, as human beings, we have an uncanny ability to justify the sins that our fallen nature drives us to embrace. Apart from the truth and grace of God, we are left in darkness, damned because of our unrepentant rebellion and unable to sincerely come to God for forgiveness because we see nothing really wrong with our actions. We are left utterly helpless, dependent upon a God who has chosen to reveal His truth and grace through the Bible and through the Messiah, the Lord Jesus Christ. Where today's artists echo the words of the 19th century poet and playwright Oscar Wilde, that the only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it, this Messiah taught us instead to pray and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Where the prevailing philosophy of art recoils at the very mention of sin or moral absolutes, clinging passionately instead to the idea that all our desires are natural and good and that the only real evil is to attempt to deny or suppress them. The Holy Scriptures tell us in 1,000 places and in as many ways, for the sinful nature desires what is contrary to the Spirit. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace.